Yes, welcome back to Footy and Friends. Hey, this is the 2026 edition of the Coaches Series, and it's a second edition, mind you, brought to you by our friends at Tackle Your Feelings. Today, we have the big dog, Michael Voss, which I'm so excited to get into. For those who don't know, this man is probably one of the most decorated players in the AFL. If you're a Carlton fan, make sure you send this to someone else that you think will enjoy it and wants to get into the inner sanctum and understand what's going through the coach's head and I suppose what's happened over the off-season as well. But if you are new to the Coaches Series or new to Footy and Friends, we actually had Sam Mitchell from Hawthorn, Adam Uze from Richmond, Adam Kingsley from the Giants, Luke Beveridge from the Western Bulldogs, and Dean Cox in his first year at the Swans. You can actually go back. The links will be in the show notes and listen to those ones now. Without further ado, here it is.
Clubby Sports.
I want to be a coach that empowers his people. You're employed here for a reason. Get that done.
As a player, you want to play in big games. As a coach, you want to coach in big games.
Complacency doesn't announce itself. But right now, we're equal 18th or equal first. And being able to compete with the best teams when it matters is a heavy focus for us.
On Footy and Friends, this is the 2026 Coaches Series.
Vossy, welcome to the pod, mate.
Good to be here, mate.
Yeah, the Gardner stand.
Mate, go on Heritage.
Do you get down here much?
No. I definitely don't end up on this side of the building, that's for sure. So we're so really privileged about where we are now. No, I haven't ventured into these locker rooms a hell of a lot.
It's funny, it brings back a few demons for me. For those out there who are listening to this on the in their AirPods or through the podcast apps, if you're watching, we're actually in the Gardner stand. So there's amazing history at this footy club, as you know and as everyone knows. But yeah, some really cool vintage spots here. So I thought we'd come down here today and have a chat.
No, and look, I haven't been here a hell of a lot, but even just, I remember my first game when I played in 1992 and we're playing against Fitzroy, but we got to use the old Carlton rooms. And, being my first game and an ex-Carlton supporter as a youngster growing up, remember walking through the halls and sort of all the old pictures that were lined up along the hallway. And then you sort of like come in and you had the weights room and then you had the chicken wire sort of fencing between the locker room and the weights, and I just I had goosebumps just sort of walking into that particular room and sort of seeing all the photos and just understanding that history of the club and going, I get to play on Princess Park today, how good's that? So it almost superseded my first game entirely just by where I was.
Isn't it amazing? If you fast forward 34 years nearly from that moment. I know that because I was born in 93 and I'm 33 this year.
Mate,
so it's not that I'm good at that math.
Fantastic, mate.
Yeah.
Since that experience was 1992.
Yeah,
so,
there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Fast forward, all that's taken part in your career, not even in coaching, but I said this to you before when we were seeing some stuff. Today, I'm genuinely nuff bag territory of just sitting down with one of my favourite players of all time. So firstly, honoured to sit down with you and have a chat. But to achieve what you have, I suppose, through Bears, Lions, then your coaching stuff, you sit here, what you just mentioned in 1992, walking down that race, and now you're coaching Carlton Footy Club. How could you ever imagine that?
Couldn't. Just the way that it all unfolded, and we talked about timing a little bit for some of the timing how it fell with how the Brisbane Bears started, and then when I moved to Queensland and the timing of that, as a 12-year-old moving and the Bears being in Queensland first time AFL never was there. I'd seen one live game of AFL football in my life till then, because I lived in country Victoria and we had to drive up the freeway. First game I ever saw was Carlton versus Hawthorn at Waverley, and so as you imagine, I was pretty excited by that opportunity. So then to play my first game here, and then sort of eventually cop some of my biggest floggings here as well, but then ultimately sort of to be through all that, and now. In my late 30s, be coaching Carlton. It's just, it's just a fantastic sort of experience. But every game I go to, I can't help but sort of look around at the stands and just sort of see the people and the huge supporter base we've got. And you sort of do lose yourself for just that 30 seconds where this gratitude overwhelms you, and you just sort of look around just for a moment. I become the fan. Where I look around and just go, how good's this? This is, don't know whether you're going to win, don't know whether you're going to lose, but just being there is just something that I'll just never get sick of.
How do you keep, I suppose, that front of mind? Because I know players and even myself, being lucky enough to play for this footy club, when you're losing and not playing the way you want to play, you can almost get angry at the fans because, you know, I'm talking personally here around like, fuck, can't you see like this is what we're doing? You know, we are trying hard. This is what's happening. But then for me now to go on the other side of the fence and I sit in the stand and I look at, you almost like see the people walking to the ground, right? They're sitting there with their mum and dad and generations of like these relationships built on a team winning on that weekend. And it's almost an amazing exercise. I wish like all players could nearly put a mask on and go and watch that to see like they're not talking about you personally. Like this means the world to them. And I think coming into this today, I was chatting to the boys. I was like, I almost feel Carlton would be in the moment nearly the hardest team to coach. Like not the team as itself, but the football club, because it's a Big Four team. So much history, as we mentioned, we're here today in the Gardner stand, but there has been a long period of no success. So how do you, I suppose, rattle with that in your mind?
Mate, it's great. It's a great question. Right? Look, one of the first things when you walk in, we had to create somewhat a transformation, and that goes beyond me. You know, you become a figurehead in all of that, but there's got to be a way. There's got to be a movement in behind it. You know, key leaders are in place. They're changing the environment. Do you stick with a coach or you don't stick with a coach? All those sort of little micro moments says a lot about the direction about where you want to go and what sort of type of football club you are. That absolutely goes to that. So without sort of those sorts of people and without that intention, it's very hard to be able to make that shift to where you want to. But you've also got this responsibility as a coach here, I feel like, where you are coaching the club. And I'm really passionate about this. I'm so passionate about this because there's this real power that Carlton can have if we choose to. But also it's what you choose to pay attention to. You either choose to pay attention to maybe ones that are noisier, or you choose to pay attention to that passion, passion towards the jumper, the kids that are watching, you know, their idols, you know, out on the field and they're wearing jumper 9 and they're wearing jumper number 7 on their back. And you miss then the interactions you have with people in the streets who, as you know, Carlton fans they're not reserved in their support, right? Like they're outwardly, I am a Carlton person, right? So, and I just want to thank you for, you know, what you're doing and, you know, sticking at it. And when it got hard, you know, helping us through that. And that's an enormous amount of pride for me. So those interactions that I get to have, and then ultimately I've still fixated on that amazing feeling it would be that when it all does click and it all does to come and all the planets do align, just how incredible this place is and has the potential to be. So that drives me absolutely every single day.
Doing the coaches series, it's been like fascinating sitting down with, you know, coaches last year, this year and having a chat. And I suppose like with yourself, like being the head of, you know, as you said, publicly the coach, but you're also coaching a football club too. It's something I probably didn't realise enough when I was in footy. Like, yes, you're coaching a team, but there's so many other things you need to take care of as well. And I'm not asking you to, I'm not putting words in your mouth here, but is there a point where like with what's happened with the footy club and I don't think anyone would blame you for feeling like this, but has there been a point where you just want to like grab everyone and just be like, can we just fucking get on the same page? Like, you know, like I think as a passionate supporter, there's been so many times where I'm just sick of reading like Carlton board or this is happening externally. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, is that, have you tried, is there a way that you can navigate that as a coach and almost like, you know this better than anyone. It's like the coach can perform with a really strong team around them. Yeah. Like, how have you been able to navigate that?
Well, the Carlton first is just one part of it. That's the first part. So, but the alignment piece and the ownership piece is another. And as you said, like all the different departments that have to come all together to be able to make that work. That's a big project. You know, if there's something I did learn from spending some time with Ange overseas at Tottenham, and the enormity of that club and the project that he had was just the importance and alignment that everyone had to match up towards just that simple notion about how he wanted to play and the team he needed to build to be able to play that certain way. And everyone had to be aligned in on that. But also to sort of speak to the, hey, let's just sort of, you know, come together. I'm massive on control what you can control. Like there's, you know, ultimately there's, you know, what you do and how you show up as a leader is first and foremost the most important thing. So I put great pride in that, a big onus on that, is like, how do I show up? So as a leader, one of the first things I ask myself is like, what does this situation demand from me right now? What type of leader do I want to be? So then it's on my boot. It's not on someone else's boot.
Yeah.
It's not because of what someone wrote about me. It's not what someone wrote about us. It's not because of what someone else thought. It's on your boot about how you turn up and how you show up. And then what I think you've got to be really mature with is then what's important to you. So if you know what's important to you, that's what you value, and don't deviate. No one said that this is exactly the right way that it needs to be. Everyone's got their own way of doing things. But I think when you're really clear on those two things, how do I show up? And then, what does this situation demand of me, and what type of leader do I need to be? It means that you're more in control of what happens next, and you don't worry as much about what other people are saying, or whether someone's angry, or what someone's saying in the media, because the reality, that's always going to be there in some form.
So there must have been a time, I'm assuming, where that wasn't the case, where potentially you were thinking, it might have been when you're at Brisbane or Port Adelaide or whatever you're doing, you are thinking externally, or even as a player. Who helped you get to that? Do you work with someone at the moment that can help you? Like, who do you see to help you with that frame of mind?
I definitely have the mentors,
Yeah.
For sure. So right now, obviously I get the benefit of having Adam Simpson as a talk to. I've had Cameron Schwab. I've had people outside at the grid as well, sort of outside of football, that have they're completely different corporate worlds they've helped me with that. And it's amazing how similar the stories are, and how everyone sort of finds their way through things. But again, what I would say is the most important thing is that exposure, like, going through something and learning about it. You won't read in a book. You won't study, in a university. I've always been a little bit, I'm happy to take risk. And sometimes I shouldn't. That's a strength and a weakness.
Yep.
But what I do get is I get a massive learning around, what to do and what not to do, just because I'm exposed to it. So I just sort of stay curious to that, be open that I'm not going to get 100% right, but just make sure that I take the lessons out of it so I become better than what I was yesterday. And that's really important to me.
What would you like? I love what you said there, because I found as well, even in my life and the people I chat to all the time, as you said, stories are so similar. No story rarely comes from someone like winning.
Yeah.
They always come from, there's been something that's fucked up and they've had to learn from there.
Absolutely.
What have been like big ones for you through your time? Because I haven't really, as I said before, I've been like such a big fan of Brisbane. Like, I grew up in Fitzroy, so I was wearing like the Fitzroy jumper.
Yeah.
I was number 20, got given it, but Simon Black was, my guy. Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah.
Look up to. And I've actually had him on the pod and chatted about like your story, his story all together. But like what, to go from a player, 3-time Premiership player, to then coaching the club. And then there was like that whole exodus of rebuilding that team, Bradshaw left. Like, I'm so curious on what you learnt from that experience that now you've taken into your time here at Carlton.
Yeah, I reckon there's maybe when people look back on my career, they assume that it all had silverware and medals, and that's just not the case at all. A lot of disappointment, a lot of hardship. When I first turned up to Brisbane, we had this youthful team that was losing. Like, my second and third game, I think we lost by an average of 85 points. Like, we got beaten by West Coast by 130 odd points in 1992 in my second game. Won the first one, got belted in the second one. Broke my leg in 1998. We come last as a team. We had to change our ways as a football club to be taken more seriously, to become more professional in the way that we went about it. Lee Matthews steps in, he takes charge in 1999. My goals as an individual shift from probably the individual accolades that I, was lucky enough to get early in my career to all being about team and just how do we get to the next level and win a premiership. And so that meant, how can I improve you? How can I improve my next teammate? How can I improve Simon Black? How can I improve Jonathan Brown? And we had to go down the bottom to learn that lesson and then ultimately win those successes. And as you highlighted with the coaching, it was I take a lot of pride out of my 5 years there, but at the same time, like, some of my biggest life lessons, and I changed too much as an individual. That's what I did learn a lot. Like, the pressure and the daily thinking, and I became too besotted about winning at all costs. And so made some decisions that I would take back, treated people differently than the way they should have been treated. I didn't trust enough people in the role. Ultimately, that's what it turned out to be. It wasn't that way the whole way through, but that's what it turned out to be. And quite rightly, I look back now and go, well, I deserve to lose my job. And I'm okay with that, because I think that you are made up of all your mistakes. You hear the sum of your mistakes and you learn from them and you get better. And that's by nature. So I have no regrets on that. So what I do now is everything about what those moments were. What I believe in about leaders, what good programs should actually look like, the trust you got to put in people to do their jobs, the coaching you need to have in behind that, having players' backs when they're under pressure and they're getting terrorised, and don't just fall into that fodder. It's about having their backs and believing in them, as I was believed in as an individual. So I've learned so much across the journey. It's been 33, 34 years. So you see a bit, you learn a bit. And unfortunately, like last year, you're still sometimes learning things. And I think that's a never-ending journey. We got some things wrong last year, but I feel like now with, some of those lessons, we can get a few of those things right.
So much to talk about with all of those bits, but I'll carry on with where you are now. So you mentioned last year there's so much still to learn in footy, and it's like you're either winning or learning. With the B&F speech, like I think as a Carlton supporter, again, loved what you said around, any good leader takes ownership from the top. And, to paraphrase, you said that you weren't happy and you wanted to take responsibility of the performance. Paraphrasing, that's sort of correct?
No, that's effectively what it was. Yeah, look, every time as a leader, what you got to step back and sort of say, is always start with yourself. Because one of the things that you got clearly the responsibility is the environment to get the best out of people. That's what our job is: create the environment to get the best out of people. And I clearly didn't do that. I'm never one to shy away from the accountability of that. And then when the dust settles at the end of the year and you start thinking through some things, we use the back end of the 6 weeks to look at a lot of things with the playing group. So we spent, probably an hour and a half with our 5+ years about what we wanted moving forward, and that we're not going to lose it. We're not going to learn this lesson again. So, while it's all raw, what do we need to learn about this? And through that information, we've been able to apply a lot of things throughout this pre-season. So I think you have to have some humility in that. Like, it's sort of like just to sort of step back just for a moment, sort of like, okay, we haven't got this right. So what do we need to address here? But it always comes down to, I'll always sort of say it's about leader first, and then you ask, okay, well, how were the players impacted, and what role did they have in it? And what role did our supporters have in it, and what role did our board have in it? And I think when we can look at it that lens, that way, if we take some level of responsibility about it, well, then you can do something about it. But if you don't take responsibility for it in some fashion, well, you can't solve the problem. So that's the way we've approached it.
What's personally, I suppose, the biggest learning from last year to take into this year then for you? Is there something that stands out the most?
I reckon the chase for excellence and missing the enjoyment of the process.
Yeah.
And I certainly have a big role to play in that, but I think we all take a really big lesson from that, because some of that comes out of expectations. Like, your expectations are big. So, should we be a top 4 team? Should we be a top 10 team? And the problem with that is that if you're constantly always living in the future, you never just appreciate what you're doing right now. So you miss all those magic moments. You miss the magic moment of a win. You miss the magic moment of someone that did something special at training. It starts to become never good enough. And so if it's never ever good enough, you lack gratitude and perspective. And we're always looking at what we don't have rather than what we do have. And I think that was a really important lesson for us last year. It was sort of like we all fell into the, hey, it needs to be better, it needs to be better, it needs to be better. But we never actually just stopped and went, how good was that moment? Like, how special was that actually happened? We sort of felt like we're sort of fighting our way through it all the time, and we're chasing the whole time. And we just didn't celebrate hard enough what we were doing and the people within it, because there's a lot of good stuff. We just didn't celebrate it hard enough.
How I know, like, we talk about like what we can control, right? But it doesn't mean that things we can't control don't penetrate.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like that's probably been, as a fan even point of view, like I feel like that's been an issue with Carlton for a while. Like, even when, for a long time, I think Carlton supporters would say like there's 4 walls, but like the pressure can be put through and then things start to change. And I know that that's been something that obviously is getting tighter. And that's why I loved the decision last year with yourself of like the pressure was on and people are calling for a head. How do you like stay calm and stick together in that moment?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Like, because you can control what you can control, but that's something that you can't control.
No, you can't. Sometimes the results, I think they can also give you at least, comfort's not the right word.
Yeah.
But when you are in that position where you're sort of finding yourself, there's this external push that's coming, and there's, that momentum is sort of riding against you. At some point in time, you've got to put that what do you call it? The sort of wedge against the wheel, and sometimes it takes a while to stop the wheel from rolling, but you just got to keep trying to put that wedge in there to stop it rolling. And then through the other way is that by starting to control what you can control and starting to focus on what you can, you're literally like, well, I think we're doing everything we possibly can to turn this thing around. Right now, it's not, and we just have to keep persisting through this. The hardest part in that all is that one of the things I think what you can fall into is that you go, well, we'll change everything, right? I don't know about you, but when I had leaders that actually then decided to go, oh, well, that's out and we'll do something new, I don't know, I stopped believing in it.
Yep.
Like I stopped going, well, if you don't believe in it, why do I need to believe in it? So sometimes as a leader, sometimes it's like, hey, this is what we want to create. We're not doing it as well as what we should. So knowing what to change and what not to change is really important. It needs some change. But ultimately, sometimes it's about persisting through the hardness.
Yeah.
Persisting through when the noise is coming. Because all of a sudden, if you're saying this is important and now it's not important anymore, why should they believe in me? Why should they stick with me and the direction that we're going based on the fact that there's just a little bit of noise? I think we've got to be better than that.
It's a really, like, because you said before around, and this is what I even struggle with, and I think anyone in business life, anyone struggles with, right? It's like sticking true to what you want to do, so staying to your game plan, but then also dropping the ego when you know, okay, it's not working, let's change. So I think that's senior coaching, right? It's like
absolutely
drawing something, sticking to it, driving standards, but then also being like, not from external point of view, but from your team point of view, being like, now it's time to work on what we want to work on.
Absolutely. And adaptability is an absolutely critical part of any role that you have. Any high performer, whether that's corporate or in sport, has to have adaptability. So when the constraints change, can you move within that? Can you be flexible enough that you can move within it? And we still have to be able to do that. What we think we do is provide a framework that we want to operate within, but it's quite flexible within it because ultimately it's still the players that have to make decisions. They still have to make choices. And likewise with coaches, you still got to be able to get the evidence in. You still got to be able to absorb the evidence. That's actually one of the hardest things to do. Get all the information in, know when to sit back, collaborate with everyone, work through the problem, find space when there is none, and then make clear, decisive decisions. That's some of the hard. There's a lot of sleepless nights in that at times.
You know what, I was always thinking, now that I'm out of the game, and it's don't get me wrong, it's a full-time thing, and there's so much that goes into it. But sometimes I'm thinking, fuck, we have too much time on our hands here.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to cut through the shit and just focus on what's important.
Yeah.
I've learned that the most is like throughout even my career now. It's like I heard a great quote through Frank Panisi, and he spoke about the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And I love that that quote. Like it just, especially with, you can get so caught up in the minute details of just everything, and it comes in. Let me ask you this. So 2025, 2026 season, obviously season didn't go the way that Carlton wanted, and then the off-season comes around. Obviously TDK was always sort of something that was tickling in the background about leaving the footy club. Charlie Curnow, Jack Silvani, a few others. The list has changed a fair bit. Your game style, I suppose, publicly has been built on contest and defence.
Yep.
With the list changes, first question is, do you think the list is in better shape? The second question is, does the game plan stay the same with the list that you've got now?
Well, what it has enabled, if there's been an opportunity and all that, is to, I guess, strip it all back and then sort of rebuild it, if you want to call that from a game model point of view. Because, stepping back for a second, what we needed to be able to do first and foremost was shift the energy. So when you got all this really sort of negative energy and, coming your way and, so all this sort of negative press, if you want to call it, coming your way, one of the really important things for us first and foremost was to get everyone together and then shift the energy of the place. To help do that was also trying to, build the ownership. So it was okay, if we're going to do this, how do we do this together? Mm-hmm. So we need the players' input on that. We need coaches' input on that. So when we went away for at our camp at Lawn, that's effectively what it was called. It was called an alignment camp. So we put, how do you want to play on the table? Right, let's build this thing. What do we want our program look like? Okay, let's build this thing. And then when we have that sort of collective ownership, you can then make decisions on the way forward about what that needs to look like. So we've spent a lot of time on that, which means it's going to be different. So I think that's what we've been able to do, is use the collective IP that we've got with our coaches. We've used our player feedback as a means to consolidate some of that. Some of it we're not listened to, and some of it we've obviously listened to, to come up what we ultimately think will help us play. One of the really big fundamental pieces in behind that has been the strengths of the group. So looking at all the players that we have and seeing where their real strengths lie, and then sort of working out not just our game model, but what tactically our strengths can actually be, and where do we place those pieces. So that's been a pretty high priority for us. And in essence, what we hope is we get, our players playing with more freedom, if you want to call it that, playing more to their strengths because they feel like they're in their sweet spot. So look, we haven't played a game yet, but certainly throughout pre-season, energy has 100% shifted. There's no doubt about that. That's coming out loud and clear everywhere. But I also don't want to be about, I really, really don't want to be about what we say. I really want it to be everything about what we do. And I'm happy enough to be able to create that space to just say, let's now be about how we execute, plan, what we do. Let's be all about action. Let's not be about what we say. Let's be all about action.
Are you giving yourself time to get a group together before round one, or do you think that like the change of the group at the moment with 4 or 5 big sort of key changes can come together pretty quickly? Like I believe footy is a lot about momentum. Like if you just sort of get the faith sort of going, it can sort of take care of itself. Yeah,
and the belief and confidence kicks in with the group, and they see things working, and it's one of the, I guess, the arts of coaching is to find out where your identity pieces are. So that's fine to shift the energy button, but you also got to put a bit of belief and confidence in behind it as well. So being able to formulate what it looks like, but also show our players, when you see a trademark play, highlight it. This is what it looks like. This is how we're going to play. Getting the players energised and excited in behind that's really, really important. They see themselves doing it well. They want to do more of it. I can tell you what no one's doing is they're not turning up to be shit. So I can guarantee you that. So always think that players are coming in and do the best they possibly can. They might get distracted from time to time from what they need to be able to do, but that's our job as coaches, to remove the distraction so they get the clarity they need to be able to go out and execute in a really simple form.
Curious in like your communication with players and like day to day, I suppose through pre-season, but more so in season. What does that look like? And like, does it change dependent on, wins, losses? I'm sure you want to be consistent, but do you find yourself as like you meet with players a lot throughout the week? Are you like, this is a weird sort of fantasy I have. It's non-weird at all, but I'm pretty keen to get a spray from you. Like if I'm a coach, like are you giving some out? Sort of a dream of mine.
I've definitely given some.
I feel like sometimes just go and get them. Well, you got permission from me to just go and get them.
Sometimes what I think is a spray is actually more than what was originally intended.
Okay.
So yeah, look, I mean, there's always a place because the competitors will always, like the true competitors will find our way.
Who's a true competitor?
Oh God, who isn't? Like Walshy,
I love Walshy.
Weeders,
I like him.
Cripper, and look, I copped it the same way. Like Lee if he wanted to make a statement to the team, I was first cab off the rank. If I half smirked at someone, it was, he'd tear me down. If I half did something that wasn't right, he'd rip into me, because the reality was, I thought, well, if it's going at the captain, well, then everyone's fair game. And they're also thinking, thank God that wasn't me. So leaders got to take hits on that. So sometimes you're making your examples not through the youngest of players that might have capacity gaps. It's the ones you want to model your environment. It's the ones that you want to model the way that you play. And if you need to make an example of your leaders to be able to reach everyone, that's their role. Sorry, that's just the way I see it. And that's their job at times. I was cut that way, and at times, no doubt our leaders cop more of that raw brunt than others. But that's important.
Is the leadership group out already?
Not yet. No,
Yeah.
we've got obviously the three boys.
Yeah.
So we will be doing in the coming weeks. We will sort of be revisiting that, and so we'll have a look at what that needs to look like. We'll probably let the players determine a little bit just what the structure that looks like. But I'm not one for big leadership groups. I'm not I like them sort of a bit smaller. That way you can have sort of probably more robust conversations. Get to the solution a little bit quicker than sort of having 12 in a room and sort of coming to a consensus.
Yeah. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Coaches Series is brought to you by our friends at Tackle Your Feelings. Tackle Your Feelings does incredible work supporting community football clubs, and I'm so proud to be an ambassador for the 7th year. The Big 7. For those who don't know, Tackle Your Feelings is a free mental health training program for AFL and netball clubs, and it aims to help participants build the skills to have conversations around mental health with someone they notice might be struggling. I've had the absolute pleasure in attending many workshops over the country, and I've always been blown away by how people respond to the content delivered by the psych. For many clubs, it's the first step in building an environment where people feel safe and supported. And to learn more about Tackle Your Feelings, make sure you check out their Instagram page. Head to TYF_AU. That's TYF_AU on Instagram. Let's get back to our chat with the coach. Thinking about your own captaincy when you're a captain, right? Like, you look at your team that you sort of played with at the peak. It's so funny to think like that. It's almost like a modern day team now, because you look at like the, I suppose the eccentricness of like some of the players that you had on your team with like Acker, and then you've got, Simon Black, everyone, Ashcroft's. You got great team. How do you find like now with the football and how that team would have gone, in the sense of like, can you imagine, like Acker he was already sort of on social media, but imagine him like with Bailey Smith on TikTok and all these things as well. Like, how would that
social media? Oh my God, I can't think what that would actually look like. He'd have a few followers. That's all I'd say. And it wouldn't just be handstands. I don't.
What's your favourite Acker story?
Oh, favourite Acker story. There's just too many of them. Like, he's just, whether it's, I grew up with Acker effectively because he was a year or two younger than me. I watched him play under 12s for Queensland. So I know Acker from a very long way out. And I've had so many interactions with him. I was the guy that, when we travelled interstate before we sort of, sci-fi, I was in the same room with him. And, he would be at 2 a.m. in the morning and he'd have the mini bar. And this is the days when they never clear the mini bar. And he'd be opening up a pack of Sandboy chips and he'd be eating chips 2 o'clock in the morning. And then he'd be cracking a can of Coke and drinking a can of Coke. And I'm thinking that we're playing the next day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I had to give him a few lessons around sort of some of those things. But he's got some pretty amazing stories. He had, with Lee one day, Lee was going through I don't know where the boys have told this one, but he was going through the list and, we didn't play a great game, and he's going through the hard ball gets, loose ball gets, and he's going, Vossy, you've had, 2 hard ball gets, how many do you normally have? I said, I probably have more, about 6 or 7, Lee. I said, well, Vossy, you need to be better. So, no worries, Lee. Then he goes to Blackie and he says, Blackie, how many hard ball gets do you normally have? He goes, I normally have, sort of 10, 11, Lee. And he said, we've only got 6, so you can be better. And then he looked down at Acker, and Acker had no hard ball gets, but he had 3 loose ball gets. And he said, Akka, how many hardball gets do you get? He goes, well, I've been thinking about that, coach. He said, I think I make hardball gets into loose ball gets because I am so fast. Interesting. Word of the lie. That is quote unquote. That is it. And we lost it. We absolutely lost it. So he said, granted, I acknowledge that you're fast, Akka, but you make sure you get your hardball gets.
That period for you, like captaining those premierships with those players, like just talk us through what that was like. And like, what was your mentality going into games as a captain of that footy club? Because it just... For me, that was peak football, like in the early 2000s, tough. Like I still remember there's this video on YouTube, which I'm sure you've seen. It's Burns when he hip and shouldered you, you get up and it's got the music K Sarah Sarah on it.
Oh, right.
Have you seen this?
No, I have not seen
I'll have to send it to you. It's random.
No,
but I reckon it's got like 1 million views on 500,000 of them.
Right. Okay.
And like that time of just footy, like it was so fierce. It was huge. Like what did you do to bring your team together for those moments? Or what was Lee like that's different to the way it is now, I suppose?
No, I think the combative nature with the way we played, I felt like we sort of elevated it from just a physical game to a mental game. And that's what Lee was always really strong with me on. And I remember a day when I went down, I didn't know I'd broken my ribs, but I'd sort of just cracked one of my ribs against Fremantle and played the game out, come back on the ground, finished out the ground, fell on the ground a couple of times, just, wincing. He rings me on the Monday and he says, Vossy, if you lay down and you're hurt, then we're all hurt. He said, don't show that you're hurt on the football field. And I was filthy. I grabbed the keys, went out the door. But that was sort of the mentality. So when...
Filthy with
what
you or that he challenged you?
The challenge that I was actually... sort of almost not hurt, or that I was playing up that I was hurt. And I was hurt, by the way. But he didn't want me showing it because he didn't feel like the captain, if it went down, you're showing you're hurt. That wasn't the way to lead. And that really annoyed me. So when Burns decked me, the first thing I'm thinking was, I'm getting up because, I'm not living with Lee after this game saying that I stayed down. So the automatic response. So without Lee coaching me then, in a really tough moment that I didn't like, I wouldn't have had that response. So, and I think great players want to be coached that way. I think they want to be challenged. And that's what you always got to keep in mind, is that it's normally the average ones that don't want to be coached. They're the ones that don't. They're the ones that want to be left alone. But the great ones, the really good ones, they want to be coached. They want to be coached through those moments. And so I think that's what Lee dragged out of me personally, was that the game wasn't just about the physical, it was about the mental. And so that's what I tried to bring to the game. So with that, when you have that sort of level of intensity, hopefully what that does is inspire others to follow you. And so as a byproduct of that, it becomes a bit of the way that we played. And I'm just really thankful that there was no microphones on the ground and we got less cameras than what we had back then to what we do now, because there's just no way that you could possibly play that way like we did.
Mate, I love that backstory to that, because it's, as I said, something that I've watched for so long, and to know why, it makes complete sense. Like, I was actually speaking about this with Mick Barlow, who's coaching at North Melbourne, who's a really good mate of mine, yesterday, and we're talking about not even coaching, but just feedback and being in a position where you are a leader in business, life, whatever it is, and avoiding those conversations. Like, Lee didn't need to say that to you, realistically, but he did. Maybe he knew he'd get a reaction, maybe he didn't. But then it sparked that next moment. And I look back at things that I've experienced in time and the things you don't want to hear. Like, I remember Heath Scotland. I talk about this a lot and the audience must fucking hate it, but I think it's valuable. I think it's so valuable. I was sort of on the way, late in my third year, didn't have another contract. And he's like, mate, if you don't pull your fucking finger out, you'll be gone. And if there's someone to take my position, I'm on the way out, I want it to be you. And that, at the time, I was like, fuck you. Why are you doing this? But that's still, I reflect on that 15 years later, still. And I think that's a really cool part of coaching or being a teacher, a leader, whatever it is, that you can actually impact someone, not in the moment, but for 15 years or 30 years.
That's a great way, because that is so true, because that's the influence that you have as a coach.
Yeah.
I relayed that story to Lee and he can't remember the conversation.
Yeah.
So he's had 100 of them
And you've had probably 20 that haven't even...
That will never leave me, that moment.
Yeah.
It'll never leave me what he said to me at the moment. Likewise with Wolsey in my formative years. And, answer back to him one day and the response I got from my coach, it'll never leave me. And so you do have to remind yourself of that, is that you do have that influence on young men. What you say to them does have real impact. How you say that to them has real impact. And I think you can underestimate that at times, the influence you can have as a senior leader, but also as the senior coach. It just has some weight. It has some carry. So you got to be really conscious of that, and that's why you got to know your players.
Have you had feedback from captaincy or coaching yet through players, even just through, Port Adelaide or Brit, that have come back and been like, oh, fuck, I didn't realise
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Mate, I've had players, even that I've played against, that I said things to on the field that I cannot remember, and they've shared what the experience that they had with me, and I can't remember it. Because, that might be their one interaction, but you might be involved in 100 of those. And it's the same as a coach. Like, you're having 100 conversations throughout the week. Sometimes what you can say, you feel like, oh, wow, I didn't realise they'd take it that way, but it's sort of being taken not necessarily in the right context. But also what you hope is that, what I always say is, I reckon if you've got great relationships with people, there's never a bad conversation.
Yeah.
So if you're invested in the person and their journey and you have belief in what they can do, there's never a bad conversation. It might be an honest conversation. It might not be what they like to hear, but it can't be a bad conversation. So always sort of take that approach. And if you're just sort of upfront and you have an honest conversation, I think at the end of the day, when people are sitting 15 years later and go, you know what, it's truthful to me. I needed to hear that. And I've learned something from it. Whether I still think that he's a prick or not, it doesn't matter. But it did make a difference to me.
It's huge. You've got your own family. You got 44 players on a list. Your own coaching staff, board, whole of club, supporter base, everyone that's sort of in your arena, I suppose, of people that are invested in you. How does Vossy look after himself, and especially your own mental health? I'm sure. That's probably developed a lot through, when you first started footy to the way it is now. But I can only imagine the stress, I suppose, that you put, all whilst you're focusing on what you can control.
Yep. There
are external, I suppose, inhibitors that are there as well. What have you learned about that around yourself, and how do you best manage sort of your own psyche?
Yeah. First and foremost, if the coach ain't right, it can sometimes lead to a not great environment. So you know that pretty quick. Look, I'm probably a member of the 6 a.m. club, so I do like to get up and have my exercise.
Are you doing legs at the night or just uppers?
That's a really good question. The weighting is slightly out of kilter.
Yeah.
So, it's
the boys saying when the squats are on, you're just racking the biceps. You're just doing bicep curls.
I don't need bigger glutes.
Yeah, okay.
It does look like I need bigger glutes.
Yeah, okay.
I don't need any bigger glutes, mate. So I never struggle with that in that area. But no, I enjoy the exercise. I mean, I do, in that hour, it's my hour. I like doing exercise within some level of intensity. So I don't tend to like to be distracted too much. I sort of find my own world in that. I find just having that hour, incredibly important. Just a simple thing at the end of the day to get separation between work and home. Just finding 10 minutes in the steam room or sauna, or just sort of like finding that wellness space where you can either have, completely just, eradicate any thoughts that you've had, take any tension out of, conversations you've had from the day or any stress you've had from the day. So that when you walk home, there's a level of normality. It's not always normal because we're dominated by this. It's a lifestyle that we choose, but that helps a lot, when you sort of invest a little bit of time in that. But yeah, I reckon that's probably the most crucial thing is don't forget yourself. And then you try to put your hobbies in, but I'm pretty poor at that. Like, it comes and goes.
What's a hobby for you at the moment?
Well, I'm trying to play golf, but my real true hobby at the moment is my dog. So
I heard you're a cat man.
I have 2 cats. That doesn't make me a cat man, just so you know. But No, I'm
It
not.
sort of
I'm
does,
not, I'm not
realistically.
embarrassed to admit that I love my 2 cats.
Yeah.
But I don't love other cats.
Okay, yeah. So you got
Is
two.
that- is that an
no,
important
that's
distinction?
play on. Yeah.
So I've got the 2 cats.
2 cats and a dog.
And a dog. So
What
border
dog?
collie. So I got a border collie.
Okay.
So love it to pieces. It's just sort of always had 2 dogs. So we'll get another one at some stage. But simple things for me is like going for a walk with a dog or throwing the ball. With the dog, like it's just it's sort of like that 20 minutes that you get to yourself.
Yeah.
And, it's having a lot of fun. Do a really simple thing, but it brings a lot of joy to me.
Yeah. Random one, but last year, was it last year or the year before with the citizens arrest?
Oh, good question. End of 2024. Yeah.
Talk us just like through that from your example, and then is it true you're in communication with him still doing some?
I don't know where you heard that from. Yes, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah, you're doing some mentoring with him or something like that.
Yeah, well, I got reached out. So obviously that whole situation unfolded. I would never do that ever again. I'll leave that to our emergency services. They do a great job.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that in their capable hands. But what it did actually do was hook up an unexpected connection and was reached out with a mentor of his that he was assigned. He sent the email out requesting to meet. I thought, why not? Like, he's obviously a 16-year-old young man that's trying to find his way and did the wrong thing, and I'd really love to hear his version of events. So I just sort of enjoyed sort of sharing about his story and just his background and where he's from. And I'm not going to go into those sorts of details. That's for his and his alone. But just sort of there was some, hopefully some things that gave him a little bit of motivation to follow through on a few things that he's been able to do. So I'm hoping that sort of really goes in the direction that he wants in his life.
It's awesome. So do you, not obviously every day sort of pen pals, but is there a part of a
No, it's more just a ad hoc
check-in, whenever.
Check-in from that point in time. So, like I said, it was an unexpected reach out, and I don't think they were expecting an answer, but I thought that...
that's awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we do, really, at the end of the day, like we mentor young men, we mentor young people, and I think what I love the most out of coaching is just being able to see people get what they want, and that sort of magic moment when you have that realization that someone finally gets it, they haven't got it for a while, but then they learn a craft, they've been working on it, it hasn't been working, and you're sort of working slowly with them, and they're failing, and it's not working, and then they get that moment where it happens. And you're like, how good's that? Like that's lights me up to be able to sort of see that. So I feel like, the whole club coaching is great, but I look for those little wins in people that just make you feel a little bit special about why you're actually doing what you're doing.
And sometimes they come 15 years later as well.
Sometimes they come later. Sometimes you don't even know the reach that you've actually had.
You know what? Even just randomly today, if you're listening to this and there has been a moment in your life, I would recommend you tell that person if there's been something cool, because the chances are they would have had no idea.
Yep.
But I think it's a cool part. Not to talk about it even myself at all, but I remember when I was at this footy club, there used to be the staircase up there, and you could kick in the pocket. And the Vic Metro, which the rooms we're in now, were training, and they were training out there, all like young 16, 17-year-old boys, and there was a kid there kicking goals from the boundary, and I used to, don't tell Shano this, but I used to know where the key was for the boot room. So we used to have all these Nike boots, and I wouldn't take any, but there would be some there. If I needed them, I could take them.
Right.
And I remember there was this kid, and I was like, if you kick a goal from the boundary, I'll go get you a pair of boots. And for me, I'm not being here, that was very easy, okay? Because I was giving them to all my mates anyway. So that was
and
quite...
You had the key.
And I had the key. So
realistically,
it was, I enjoyed the process. But the guy kicked the goal, and I gave him the pair of boots. And long story short, 6 years later, I'm doing a podcast with Zach Butters, and he told me, it wasn't him, but he was next to the kid.
Wow.
And he was like, mate, the reason, whenever I see kids is I always think about that and how cool that was. So when I'm a player and I have that, I'll try my best to have impact on people. Yep. And by no means was I Zach Butters, but imagine that coming from him now.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
And I think with all those touch points, when we talk about our responsibilities as players, we don't fully understand just exactly the impact that we're having on that next generation. And, I was the 12-year-old that, looked up to seeing Wayne Johnson and getting his socks and not taking them off for 2 weeks and, just crying when mum decided to wash them. Just like that. He was just giving his pair of socks.
Yeah.
But for me, it was everything. And we underestimate the small things. And I absolutely concur wholeheartedly. Send that text.
Yeah.
Send that text. If you've got their number, make sure you always let people know, because the response you get, was often sometimes even more overwhelming when you realise it's like, wow, I didn't know that would actually mean to them. But we are so bad at walking past that. We are so bad at it. And we can just get better, as humans, being able to stop and acknowledge those small little magic wins, because we just walk past them too easily, and we should acknowledge it when it's there.
Bloody oath. There's 2 things that I've seen you light up about, okay, besides footy and family. Actually, 3 things. Your cats. Okay. There was something else that I forgot. There was something. You're a big cat man. There was something else. There was something else. But the third one was Robbie Williams.
You're right. Yes.
You love Robbie Williams.
Oh, well, that goes.
Or is that thing? Because I sing Robbie Williams to my son most nights. I don't do.
What song?
Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good one. It's got a fair few key changes as well, so it's like hard if you've had a big day. But
I'll tell you about a funny backstory for that, which is probably why it's like a felt. So when we did win our premierships, we were lucky to.
How many again was it?
Won a couple, and through, as you know, the premiership's one thing, but the special stuff's the after stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's all things that are going on, and every year we had this sort of started the first year and then sort of just carried on. I can't remember whose house we were at. It might have been at Leper's place, I'm not sure. But Brownie loved also Robbie as well. And I haven't danced with too many men in my life, but like we was sort of ritual. Brownie and I was sort of dancing and sort of like waltzing to Robbie Williams, and so like I don't know, for some reason whenever I see Robbie, I just think about that moment of just like being in someone's random house and listening on this big screen, and he's sort of like singing live in the middle of somewhere in front of 100,000 people, and here's Jonathan Brown and I sort of dancing away.
But mate, there must have been something in that period. It must have been like Live 8 or something like that.
Like
because
like that, yeah.
there was I used to go to, this shows you how, back to those 12-year-old kids or whatever. Like I must have been 7 in 2000. And every year we'd go, my sister was doing dance comps and we go to Ballarat, dance competitions. And it must have been around September, obviously, because we watched the grand final at a friend's house who was actually, it was like you grow up thinking your cousins, they're not actually your cousins, but we'd go there every year and we'd watch Robbie Williams DVD into the grand finals. It's how crazy is that? Like it's just like it must have just been like a real formative memory of like Robbie Williams into the Lions. Yeah,
it's quite bizarre. So then when you're having that interaction and a lot by accident.
Yeah.
And then
so did you meet him? Was it late? Not when you were playing. It was coaching.
No. Went coaching with Carlton, and it was come through. When he performed here, and it was just by chance. And what really caught me by surprise was, after meeting him, I sort of thought it'd be a shake of the hands and hand over the jersey and see you later. And he was just really absorbed in the conversation and sort of sat there for 10, 15 minutes having a chat. It wasn't, it was how's the weather and all those sorts of things that. But then when he's performing, you're sort of sitting backstage and he's about to go on in 5 minutes time. That part's surreal. Like that's like where you're like, oh, okay, this is weird. Like, to be here in this moment, it's quite big. Like it's quite weird. But like for me, that's what it's all about. Like it's all about. That's what sport's all about. It's about memories. Like it's about. Communities coming together, having a feeling like you belong to something. All these sort of really magic memories you have growing up. And when you find what those magic memories, it lights people up. You just said it just lights people up. And so when you sort of then, experience sort of the real touch points of those, whether that's your idol that you watch play on the ground or just a memory of Jonathan Brown and I just dancing in a lounge room somewhere to finally meet the person who was actually serenading us. They're all just great memories that certainly light me up, that's for sure.
Mate, you've been extremely generous with your time. I've got one more question that I'd love to know is, out of all your former teammates, because there's like a vast array of just so many different personalities, that because of the success, but also because of that, what they've transitioned to in post-footy, so obviously like McRae coaching, Lepage, obviously he's at Collingwood as well.
Yep. Chris Scott.
Who's better out of Chris and Brad, do you reckon, by the way? Who are you picking out of those two?
I can't. It's like picking your favourite child.
Okay.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah, okay. That wasn't the question, by the way. Lappin, who I think, internally in the AFL world, people know how special he is. But I think even now with his post work of like head of development, like touted as probably the best development coach the AFL's got. Who, Brownie, everyone, who surprised you the most with from the player they were to then what they've done post football?
Oh, that's a great question because that sort of extends past football terms. Really,
could their personality of like, did you see McRae being a head coach, or was it like?
Yeah, there's a couple that probably, that sounds a bit disparaging. Not when you say that, not necessarily going to be head coach, but
maybe it just wasn't on their radar.
Yeah, it wasn't. Time. Well, I didn't think it'd be on. I didn't think it'd be on Craig's radar. Flies. So even with Chris, I remember having a conversation with Chris before he retired, and he was trying to work out what he did next. So that was the year of that he was finishing, and he was weighing up whether he went to Fremantle, and coached, or went down a different path altogether. Wow. So what a sort of sliding moment that's been for him. So I don't think necessarily that was certainly his original path that he went down. I don't know. Like I think sort of the one that is not surprising, but you highlighted Nigel. Nigel's probably my favourite teammate. Like he was never seeked any accolades. Even at Geelong, he sits behind people. He's quite happy with that. He doesn't want to be in the lights, but his relationships with people and the time he spends with people, is his real strength. It was his strength as a player, outside of his outstanding talent, and also it's no doubt his strength as a coach. Everyone I ever speak to from Geelong always talks about Nigel Lappin, and that doesn't matter whether that's the oldest player or the youngest player. He has a touch point across everybody. So when I sort of listen to that, I think he's having a significant influence on a place. He's not the person that wants to be in the light, and he'd probably be quite embarrassed that I'm actually talking about this right now, but he's obviously played a really critical role. So, and he's the most underestimated player out of our whole team. He was a special player, and he deserves to sit in the top end conversation. Look at all our grand finals. Like, he is prominent in every one of them. Like, look at all our final series. He is a prominent player in every single one of them. I reckon it's a fair measure when you can do that.
Broken ribs in one of them too.
Broken ribs. Yeah. Well, that was one of the toughest things I've ever seen. Like, because he nearly fainted like before the game. Seriously, like, the day before, to see the fitness test he went through, and then, not unbeknown to us, he basically punctures a lung in that particular test. Turns up the next day. Wouldn't be allowed to do it today, but effectively numbed the whole left side of his body, I think it was, so he could play in that game, and still went out and performed. Spent the remainder of the week in Melbourne because he couldn't fly back to Brisbane in hospital. So you sort of like, oh, well, there's some sort of tough players that get injuries during a grand final, but to take that in, I mean, that's not many have spoken about that a lot, but wow, that's pretty some special achievement.
Who was with the fitness test with him?
It was Aaron Shattuck, which I think ironically, sorry Shats if I've got this wrong, mate, but I'm pretty sure he would have taken his spot.
His spot, yeah. Similar to like the Stevie J, I think it was Taylor Hunt sort of situation as well.
So he was smashing him. Like, it was a good test, and an unbelievable story. But they're all the sort of little unheralded things that underestimate the type of teammate he is, and probably the type of coach that he is. I think. He's probably just starting to get the real accolades for, obviously clearly what he's done there. Yeah,
he's a great man. I've been lucky to know a few of the Geelong boys. He's always at the weddings, and he always respects me for chewing his ear off as well. Example. So
he loves football, mate. You always talk football. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, so. I'm surprised he's got him left, but he's done a great job. Vossy, how do you, in your controllables for yourself, how do you measure success in 2026 as the coach? Like, what are you aiming to get out of this year?
It's a good question. I mean, like, clearly the most obvious thing to say is that to find out that we've got better. I mean, you want to be able to sort of build the team cohesion. Have a sort of regular group of players that are rolling out there to be able to execute the way that you want. I tend to also always dive into the process side of things rather than necessarily the outcome, because that's all we get to look after. I'd love to think that our supporters are looking down and seeing a team that celebrates and they come along that journey with us, like they're totally connected to the way we want to play. I hope they're looking down at us and they're seeing a tough group that hangs in there. When it's going for us, but also when it's going against us. So they start to become all those sort of little measurables that we want to put in place that obviously we've got to put up in lights when we work our way through things, but also address it pretty promptly when we're not getting what we want.
Good stuff, mate. Exciting.
Thanks for your time, mate.
Best of luck
Cheers.
for 2026. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yes, Faffers, thanks for listening to another episode of Footy and Friends. Make sure you are following us on Instagram at Footy and Friends, TikTok at Footy and Friends, and if you want to get in touch or send us anything for the show, email us via boris@clubbysports.com. That's Boris with a B at clubbysports.com. Remember, feedback is a gift, and we'll chat to you soon. You!